Now, detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult of propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
We give Jezebel too much credit in the modern world. There's a belief that there's a Jezebel spirit out there working in the world. She's dead. Jezebel is dead, but there was a spirit behind her. And we're going to talk about that on this episode of A View from the Bunker. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert. Joining us is a guest who's been here a number of times, but not enough recently. He's a prolific author and award-winning Hollywood scriptwriter and the creator of several fiction series that we encourage you to read because they help you to visualize exactly what's going on in the spirit realm. And he does a lot of theological research as well. He's the author of the Chronicles of the Nephilim, the Chronicles of the Apocalypse, and now Chronicles of the Watchers. And his newest release is, you'll have to explain this. It's actually the second book out, but it's book number 1 in the series, Jezebel, Harlot Queen of Israel. It's our honor to welcome Brian Godawa back to the program. Brian, welcome.
Thanks for having me again, Derek. It's great to be here to talk to another fellow who does the kind of research I do.
Well, and to your credit, you put out a lot of notes, and even in the form of nonfiction books that relate to your fiction. And I'll put a link in the show notes so that people, when they go to the Chronicles of the Watchers page at your website, godawa.com, will see that you've also got 3 nonfiction books along with the 2 novels in the series. So The Spiritual World of Jezebel and Elijah is one. Psalm 82, which is a key component of this divine council worldview. And then the second novel in the series, which was actually released first. Now, QIN, that's pronounced Chin, correct?
Yep.
Okay. About the Dragon Emperor of China and the spiritual world of ancient China and the Bible, which we've discussed. I think we did a program on that. If we didn't, we missed it because I really enjoyed that novel. That was one of my favorites in your series.
Yeah, I think we did when it was the novel was originally called The Dragon King, and then I retitled it for the purpose of this series.
Okay. Well, we'll put a link in the notes to that, too, because if you've not heard that, pairing that with this, I think makes for some interesting comparison and contrast, because there were some things in there that I was not aware of. But first of all, with Jezebel, let me start with this. You were one, you and your wife, Kimberly, were 2 of the intrepid folks who joined us in Israel in 2018. And
yep.
I'm about 6 chapters into Jezebel, and I see already a couple of locations that we visited on the tour, Mount Carmel and the Valley of Megiddo. How did seeing those sites with your own eyes affect your writing?
Well, I'm afraid I might disappoint you on this one, but it didn't really affect me much. I found that, you know, the research you can do on the internet now and even videos and stuff are just fine in many situations for writing about those places, particularly when it has to do with the ancient world, because of course, you know, the best you get are ruins anyway, right? So if I was doing a modern day story in New York, yeah, it might be advantageous for me to go through New York and experience it in that sense. But because it's so ancient, it honestly didn't help that much. It really didn't.
Well, you know,
sorry to disappoint.
Well, no, not really. It really doesn't surprise me because, you know, Sharon and I this year, after our Israel tour, we went over to England and Scotland to see sites that she's been writing about in her Red Wing saga. And she found the same thing, that through a lot of research and, you know, ancient maps and whatnot, she was able to visualize the sites, the streets of London, for example.
And the truth is that, you know, when you're doing fiction, you need to craft the location a little bit to the story as well. So, you know, like I've often, in fact, when we went there, I'd already written the Chronicles of the Nephilim, right? And so I'd already gone through all that stuff. And in some ways, it was sort of like when you go back to your home that you grew up as a kid, you're like, man, this is so small. Well, that's kind of how it felt going to these ancient places I'd already written about. I'm like, you know, I'm glad I wrote this without being here because my imaginative version is better. At least in terms of location, you know. I mean, because I mean, you have to have things work for your story, and so obviously there's always fictional adjustments that you do, and you're never totally exact, and most people understand that. So
Jezebel in the as a topic, obviously she's been a character that's been used in fiction and in film for many, many years. And I should ask about this because I see on the cover of your novel to be a major motion picture. So did you write the novel with the idea of a film in mind, or do you always write that way?
No, this was a unique situation because what actually happened was that I was hired to write a screenplay for Jezebel years ago. And in recent years, they've been getting a little closer to being able to raise money. This is an independently produced movie, so, not through a studio. But nevertheless, they want to be a pretty big budget. And so I wrote that for them. And in recent years, I was able to negotiate the novelization rights, the publication rights. So this was a unique situation where I wrote the script first, and then I adapted from the script and I wrote the book. But what's interesting is it's the same thing as if you go in reverse. Like normally, you write the book first and then they make a movie based on it. And of course, the movie's often very different from a book because, you've only got 2 hours and you're not going to get everything in there. And there are different needs of different mediums for storytelling. Filmmaking is a visual medium, so there's going to be a different way of telling the story than in the literary mode. And so I found that to be the case going backwards as well, where the biggest sort of difference is that I don't really have the spirit, the supernatural, the divine council worldview in the movie. There just wasn't much time. I mean, we could do this as a whole mini series, actually, if we did it in my way, if we did it the best way. But I focus more on the historical epic storytelling, kind of like Cleopatra, that kind of a thing, and for the movie. But in the novel, I expanded it to fit my paradigm of the Chronicles paradigm. And so in that sense, there's a lot more in the novel than there is in the movie. So, and the other thing was I also had to do other research and as I was writing the novel, and I found things that I needed to make adjustments on that weren't in the script. So, as the more you research, the more, changes you can make. So, so I'm really proud of the novel. And I actually think I'd hate to say it, but I think people will say the novel's better than the movie on this one. I shouldn't say that because people will go, should I go see the movie? But the movie hasn't been made. It hasn't been produced yet. So I don't know if and when it will, because movies are a very difficult business. They're almost impossible to get made. So, you pray and hope that it will. But so this one's there's a lot in this. There's a lot in this that isn't actually in the script.
So the Chronicles of the Nephilim followed the creation of the giants and how they were used in this long war between the fallen angels, the small g gods of the pagan world, to try to take the earth away from God and ultimately perhaps knock Yahweh off his throne. What's the difference in the focus with the Chronicles of the Watchers?
Yeah, that's a good question. In some ways, the Chronicles of the Watchers are because I've got more books I want to write, and I can't go back and insert them into the order of the Chronicles of the Nephilim, because I will be doing some books some stories that might go back into the Chronicles of the Nephilim. But it would be weird if I did, like, for instance, Moses and the gods of Egypt, and that was Chronicles of the Nephilim 10. It would be kind of weird because Nephilim are in order, but Chronicles of the Watchers will not be in order. They're standalone, but you can read them in order if you want, in chronological order when they get completed. But they're not going to be written in chronological order, and that's one of the reasons why I, started with Jezebel was because of the script, and then I realized, okay, I can't go in order. But there is another element to it, and that is I operate on the basic idea that King David, was in the Bible. You don't hear anything more about giants after King David, and so the idea that there is that he did finish them off, basically. So I mean, obviously there are going to be individuals still left around here and there, but they were basically finished off as what I call the War of the Sea. the Chronicles of Nephilim was about the war of the seed, as you said, the seed of the serpent versus the seed of Eve, which is basically the seed of Messiah. And so, and the Nephilim were part of that. But I do continue that Watcher paradigm into the Chronicles of the Watchers. So in some ways, the Chronicles of the Watchers is about more focus on the Watchers than, and most of it's going to be post-David. But there will be a couple novels that might be pre-David. Like I said, I think I might be doing Moses. But and then eventually I would like to possibly expand it out into the other nations, like the British Isles and even maybe the Americas and stuff like that, if all goes well.
You could wind up like Sharon, then you could be writing novels for the next 20 years, God willing.
Yeah. And it's a genre that's very, people love it, man. They're eating it up. So I love doing the research, and I love telling those kinds of stories. So as a writer, I do have other things I want to write, and you hate getting stuck into one particular genre. Well, let's put it this way: you love it for a while, but then as a writer, you want to break out and write more things too. I'm not at that point yet. I still love doing these stories, these biblical Watcher stories. So I'll be fine. But I am, in fact, this year, if I could just throw this on as an aside before we get into there, I'm going to be releasing screenplays that I've written over the years. Most of them were not produced. It's like I said, it's almost impossible to get a movie made. But I was going back and looking at some of my old scripts, and I realized, these are good stories, and most people aren't used to reading scripts because they're a very different format. I say they're longer than a short story and shorter than a novel, so they're somewhere in between, and their format is very different. And not a lot of people do read them, but as I was reading them, I thought you don't have to have an education just to learn how to read them. You just need a few pages where people explain, here's how the format works. And then I think that it's a great form of storytelling. So I'm going to release a bunch of my movie scripts that I've written starting in January. And those are that's a different kind of storytelling than my Chronicles, and see if people might learn how to enjoy that format, because I love it. It's very brief, very short, to the point, and based a lot on sharp dialogue and stuff. So the tagline, or the series, is called Screenplays as Literature, and the tagline is read the script, imagine the movie. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that people might find that to be exciting. So that's one new avenue that I'm opening up as a writer as well. And then there will be other some contemporary novels that I have plans to write. So we'll see. Very cool. Now, for people who are listening to this program, there's a good chance that they understand what the Divine Council worldview is about, the Deuteronomy 32 worldview. But for those who are new, because we are finding that through things that have happened over this past year, there are people who are just now discovering this podcast, which just startled me the other day to realize I've been doing this now for 10 years and we didn't even mark it. So, and the PID radio podcast that preceded it, that Sharon and I started, is now over 15 years old. So, we got over 1,400 hours of audio posted to the web, which is kind of scary. It'll be interesting to see how long. Well, of course, I won't see it with my own eyes, but to be curious to see how long that stuff persists after we're gone. But for people who aren't familiar with the Divine Council worldview, what is it, and how do you depict it in Jezebel? So the Divine Council worldview is or another way of calling it is the Deuteronomy 32 worldview, as Heiser calls it. And if you read Deuteronomy 32, 8 through 10, it talks about how at the Tower of Babel, when God split the languages, confused the languages, it says that he allotted the nations according to the number of the sons of God, but he allotted to himself Jacob, or Israel. And the idea there is that these sons of God, there are different interpretations, of course, but you and I take the supernatural interpretation that the sons of God, which were in Genesis 6, talks about the sons of God coming down from heaven, mating with women and bearing them the Nephilim, giants and all that. And that's the sort of supernatural element where the supernatural beings mated with humans and created this abominable sort of hybrid creature, and the Nephilim. And but these watchers, actually, these rebellious watchers, by the time of Babel, God does, destroys the world with a flood, but then, and starts it over, but then once again, mankind again, reverts to idolatry, builds the Tower of Babel and self-deification and all this kind of stuff. And, the Tower of Babel was probably a ziggurat, and Tower of Babel wasn't about reaching into the sky literally to reach the heavens. There might be some element actually to that, but it's really more about creating a stairway for the gods to come down and commune with humanity. And
a portal.
And so, what?
A portal.
Yeah, a portal, yeah. And so, but at the Tower of Babel, and God stops that by splitting the nations, and that's where we generally get the notion of the biblical notion of the origin of the nations. And the nations in particular, are considered the Gentiles according to the Jews. And why? Because God chose Israel for himself, and the rest of the nations were called Gentiles. And then the idea there is that, and Deuteronomy 32 isn't the only place where this occurs, but it's a strong explanation of it. And the idea there is, of course, that God places them under the authority of these sons of God. And some believe that they were already fallen when he placed them under. Some believe that they were righteous and then they fell again or whatever, or had some kind of falling after the fact. But nonetheless, we all agree that there's this that the Gentile nations are basically under the authorities of these false gods, that fallen watchers, basically. And so by the time of Daniel, when Daniel talks about the watchers, and he talks about how there's the prince of Persia and the prince of Greece battling with the prince of Israel, who is Michael, the archangel. By the time of Daniel, you've got that language still going on in there. So that's the basic idea. And so Chronicles of the Watchers is my goal is to tell stories, and like I said, I'll start with the Bible, but ultimately expand out to other nations and stuff. But in the time of Israel, Jezebel. This is in the ninth century, and you've got the split kingdom of Judah and Israel, and Jezebel takes place up in Israel. And so what I do is I have two stories going on that intersect and interact at times, and that is the spiritual, supernatural story of the Watchers, as well as the human story of, for instance, Jezebel and Ahab and Elijah. And of course, we know the stories about Elijah and calling down fire from heaven and stuff. But we don't get the Bible doesn't show us what's going on behind the veil. We get glimpses of it, right? But doesn't show us that. So my goal is to use fiction to sort of portray that spiritual world and show how it in the Bible. The idea is that on earth as it is in heaven. The idea is that these heavenly watchers are the spiritual or supernatural authorities, principalities over the earthly rulers and authorities. So, for instance, when there's a battle going on earth, they believe there's also a battle going on in heaven. When a nation like Babylon is destroyed by another nation, then that's like then those gods are defeated. That kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And so they also pictured that, thought that way towards Israel as well, that they would, like if they defeated Jerusalem, that Yahweh was defeated, the God Yahweh was defeated by their God. And of course, Israel had the notion, no, Yahweh wasn't. Yahweh's chastising us because we've been disobedient to Yahweh. Mm-hmm. Because Yahweh is, of course, the creator over all these. And these other gods are not, they're not, what should we say? They're not omnipotent and omniscient or anything like that. They're actually created beings, but they're worshipped as gods. So what I do in the Jezebel story is, so Jezebel is a story that has to do with, Jezebel was a princess of Tyre who married King Ahab, and they did so to create a sort of a diplomatic peace between Phoenicia and Israel, in contrast with Damascus or the Arameans, who were at war with them. Mm-hmm. And so Israel and Tyre and Phoenicia are united through the marriage with Ahab and Jezebel, right? And so Jezebel, as we know the story, she brings Baal worship into Israel, but she was also actually a priestess, a high priestess of Ashtart, and her father was actually the king of Israel, Ethbaal, his name was, and mm-hmm. he was a high priest of Ashtart. So what happens is they're, of course, bringing in this Baal worship, and there's lots of other things connected to it. So what I tried to do was to bring out this understanding of the Baal and Ashtart, as well as Anat is another deity. We can talk about each of these, but some of those deities that she brought in, I'm telling those are the territorial principalities that I'm telling their story that's going on at the same time. Now, this isn't so much like demons, demons of lust and demons of hate and stuff like that.
Right,
it's more that's more like the simplistic spiritual warfare notion of today, where it's about like, how do we pray and battle demons and all this. It's really not so much that as it is a higher plane of the authorities in the heavenlies. And so there is intersection, there is interaction, but it's more of a reflection that's going on. So that's kind of that's the premise of the story. And but what I found really cool was I was able to actually integrate a lot of the storyline of the Baal epic into my story. It fit really well. And the Baal epic is, of course, an infamous epic about Baal that we got from Ugarit, and it basically was the Canaanite story of the storm god. And so there's several different stories of his, and one of them is where Baal actually. Well, I'm not going to jump ahead. I won't jump ahead and talk about that yet. But so let me just say, I integrated some of that storytelling. So if you're reading the novel and you're seeing what the gods are doing, it's not just arbitrary made-up storyline. It's actually rooted in their Baal myth. And then I connect it all to the story of the Bible, which climaxes, at Mount Carmel, at least in the middle of the story, climaxes at Carmel. And so, that's what I'm doing with that. But if we start from the human side and Jezebel, one of the most fascinating things about Jezebel to me is that she's very relevant for today.
Yes.
As you mentioned, we've heard the spirit of Jezebel, but it's interesting because the godless world has sort of taken the usual tack where they sort of take the insult and try to turn it into a badge of honor. And so now we have like websites. There's a website called Jezebel that's, media and news from a leftist feminist perspective, right?
Right.
And so it's sort of like they wear the name proudly, which is funny because Jezebel did that at a point in her story as well, and she was still judged. But nonetheless, and modern day scholars some of them have tried to rehabilitate her image and sort of revise her story into one of being she was just an empowered woman or a strong woman who was, of course, oppressed by the patriarchy, right? Right. So, and yet on the other hand, because she brought Baal worship into Israel, part of Baal worship was, of course, child sacrifice. And I know you've done a lot of research on this too. Child sacrifice, which was a lot of it went on in Phoenicia. Well, they brought it with them. Now, Israel had already been doing it down in Jerusalem, so it's not like it was absent from
That's
them.
correct, yes.
Nevertheless, she brought child sacrifice, and of course, we Christians make that clear connection between abortion and child sacrifice, and how we are now sacrificing our children on altars of convenience, that kind of a thing. So all these things, these feminism, abortion, it's very relevant, and I bring it into my storyline, of course, in an ancient context, so it's not like it's a modern-day political tract by any means. But it's definitely a story that you can see resonates with today, and that's what I'm really, really encouraged about. We have these, what's the famous TV show, A Handmaid's Tale, right?
Right.
Where it's about the evil Christian patriarchy that wants to take over and kill gays and all this. And the truth is it's actually, we're more like Jezebel. And so my novel Jezebel is sort of the answer to a Handmaid's Tale. So I hope people appreciate that. So, but one of the cool things just to start was, so you jump into the story and you find that her name actually in the story is Isabel. So she's Isabel of Tyre, and that's an anglicized version of it, but Isabel was her name. But Isabel, and you're like, well, what's going on? Well, I thought her name was Jezebel. Well, the reason why is because scholarship has shown that the name Jezebel that the Bible writers use. Whoops, sorry, that was my computer stand. The name Jezebel is actually a play on words using Hebrew, and it's really an insult. Let me fix this. Sorry about that.
Well, the Hebrew authors love to do stuff like that, and we see that with a number of names. I mean, from Nimrod to some of the names that are given to Saul's sons, like Ishbosheth instead of Ishbaal, for example.
Yes, and also Ashtoreth is another one.
Yes,
and she's a deity as well. Well, we'll talk about that. But first of all, Jezebel. So Jezebel is actually a change of the letters, so that basically the original Isabel means where is the prince, and that name is related to Baal Hadad, the storm god of Canaan. Mm-hmm. The idea was that they engaged in rituals that used the Baal epic story as their basis, and the idea was that through the harvest season, basically Baal would die. He would Mot, death would take him down into the underworld, and that's of course winter, right? And so then Anat, his sister, seeks after him. This is actually in the Baal epic, and I bring this into the storyline. But the point is that so she goes and brings him back. She cuts up Mot, destroys him into a million pieces, and throws him out onto the land. And she brings Baal back, and so that was supposed to be the harvest. So when the harvest season came, they would cry out, "Oh, where is the prince? Where is the prince?" In other words, he's being brought back from Hades, basically, or Sheol, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the storyline that you could see is integrated into their fertility cult. And so Jezebel's name is actually that calling out, where is the prince, right? So the way that the Hebrew is played, and I'm not a scholar, but I detail this stuff in my companion book for mm-hmm. Jezebel to explain it. But it basically means there's two aspects of what it could mean. And let me see if I can find the actual text. Of course, we know that. So we know that in Kings, it mentions that name. Where is that? I don't think I can find it. Near the end of Jezebel's story, it talks about how. There it is. 2 Kings 9:37. And the corpse of Jezebel shall be as dung on the face of the field in the territory of Jezreel, so that no one can say, this is Jezebel. That's sort of like the final judgment on Jezebel. Well, the word Jezebel probably means there is no prince but dung. And so in a sense, it's a reference to feces, but it's also a denial of the prince existence. So it's kind of an interesting play on words. Yeah, so I tell the story. It starts with Isabel, but it's not until Elijah comes into the picture and he starts calling her Jezebel, while everyone else is calling her Isabel. And so you're right. The Hebrews actually like to use word games, and one of the gods that Jezebel brought was Ashtart, and Ashtart was a what would they call them? An escort of Baal, or a
consort?
Consort of Baal, exactly. Ashtart was a consort of Baal. She was a goddess. She was also a fertility goddess of sorts. Mm-hmm. In the Bible, you read the word Ashtoreth, and you think, well, what's that? Oh, that's another goddess. Well, actually, that's another play on words. And what it is it's Ashtart, but what they did, and they've done this with other gods as well, they take the letters of the word Bosheth, which means shame, mm-hmm. and the vowels, and they put those in between the consonants of Ashtart, so it changes it from Ashtart to Ashtoreth. So it's, in other words, they're inserting the shamefulness of it into the name. And another interesting aspect of that is that the Hebrews there's not a word for goddess in the Old Testament. There's a word for gods, but there's not a word for goddess. They never use that word. They'll name the names of Ashtart, Ashtoreth, right, mm-hmm. or even Asherah, another goddess as well in Canaan. She's like the mother goddess. And they use the names, but they never have a word for goddess. And I kind of see it as a sort of a way of, you know how when you want to really insult someone, you sort of don't refer to them, you don't use their name, or you may use their name, but you don't refer to them. And I think that's kind of what the Bible writers are doing. They're ignoring that goddess element because they despise God. At least the writers of the Bible despised goddesses. You know, unfortunately, the Jews, the average Jews of that time period, loved the goddess.
Well, yeah, and I mean, men being who we are, you know, having a worship that involves, you know, physical intimacy. That's a pretty easy sell.
Yeah, exactly. So it starts out with Jezebel, and the story starts with her basically being betrothed to King Ahab, and how that begins. And then we also meet Elijah, who everyone knows and loves. But the interesting thing is that I told the story more from Jehu's eyes. You might think, oh, it's Elijah versus Jezebel, but it's really not. Elijah does contest with Jezebel, obviously Mount Carmel, and several other places. But in a real sense, the story is more about Jehu versus Jezebel, because Jehu is this warrior who is the commander of the king's armies, and I have him go on a spiritual journey because he's a man who's caught between two worlds. He wants to serve the king, who is God's anointed. The word Messiah is anointed. He's God's anointed one. And so he wants, he believes obeying the king is obeying God, but he also is committed to Yahweh. And of course, with Ahab, when Jezebel comes in, and Ahab was not very obedient to God, shall we say, he would that you can see that's a conflict of values. And so that's the story talks about Jehu as he struggles with that. And as Jezebel rises more in power, Jehu is forced to confront that compromise in his own life until the point where he ultimately ends up having to kill Jezebel. And if I jump to the end of the story, there's another cool little connection with the gods and goddesses and stuff. So, at the end of Jezebel's story, we read about how she, Jehu's coming to get her. Let's see if I can find that verse here too. Maybe I don't have it, but Jehu's coming to, there it is. So in 2 Kings 9:30, it says Jehu's on his way to kill her, right? And it says she painted her eyes and adorned her head and looked out the window. And the first thing you might think is like, was she trying to seduce him? Because the idea of painting her eyes, putting on makeup, adorning herself, she's trying to seduce him. No, she wasn't trying to seduce him. There's no chance of that. He hated her. They hated each other, right? Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is that is actually a literary reference to a very common image in the ancient world, and we have many of these actually, called the woman in the window. And the woman in the window is this little, we have like ivory carvings of them, and one of them actually I think is even from Tyre. And it's basically a picture of a woman in the window, and it's the idea of, it is a sort of the prostitute, but it's more the holy prostitute, what they call the Kedoshim. Right. And it actually is a reference to Ashtart. And so the woman in the window was sort of like a icon or an idol of Ashtart that was also connected to the holy prostitutes, So what the writer of the Bible is doing is connecting that Jezebel to the goddess Ashtart, who, remember, she was a priestess of Ashtart. Mm-hmm. She brought Baal worship, but she was also a priestess of Ashtart who also served Baal. And so he's making that connection with the goddess before he destroys her. And so, the Bible is using this polemic to try to, indicate that the goddesses, basically the goddess's influence is eliminated along with Jezebel, who's sort of represented as that goddess who's being destroyed by Jehu. So those are a couple of the elements that I bring in into the book, and I explain them into the storyline as well.
So Elijah would have been the obvious choice for the protagonist of this story, because certainly the biblical narrative puts more emphasis on Elijah than on Jehu. Why choose Jehu then?
Well, I think some of it's my propensity to, as a writer, you want to try, you want to think outside the box. You want to tell the story from the perspective of someone that's people had not thought of, and give it a unique angle. Some of it's that. Some of it is there's a way in which Elijah is quite enigmatic of a character as well. But here's the thing. The reason why is because the contrast with Jezebel in the end is with Jehu, because Jehu is the man who kills her, and he's the one who becomes king, and he's the one who eliminates Baal worship in Israel. So the true hero versus the villain, if Jezebel is the villain who brings in Baal worship, then the hero of the story is going to be the person who gets rid of Baal worship and gets rid of Jezebel, see? So that's why he's that. So in a sense, Elijah is more like the wise old mentor. He's the guy who's pronouncing the judgments. He, of course, obviously brings fire from heaven and some of these miracles and such. But he's the voice of God to the people. But the man of action, God's right hand, is actually Jehu. And so in some ways, that's much more interesting to me. But I actually do go into Elijah as a character. And one of the things I always struggled with Elijah, and I bring this into the story, the story was a way of me trying to work this out, was, did you ever think about that? Like, why did you have Elijah on Mount Carmel, who like does the gutsiest thing ever, like in the real world has a contest of deities saying, which God is going to call fire from heaven to consume the sacrifice, right? That's pretty gutsy because, unless God literally tells him, and he doesn't say he did, so it's like he's counting on the fact that God's going to come through, and God doesn't always have to do that, right? So he does this, and fire comes from heaven. They slaughter 400 prophets of Baal. And even the king has a renewed, respect again for Yahweh. Mm-hmm. And at the height of this victory, what happens? Jezebel writes him a letter, not even in person. She just writes him a letter saying, I'm going to do to you what you did to my prophets, or my name isn't Jezebel or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then he runs. He runs for 40 days and 40 nights in fear, Yeah. And I don't know about you, but that always made me wonder, what the heck? How could he do that, right? And so part of it was trying to make sense of that. And I actually think that in a way that makes Elijah the most relatable to us little people. Like we tend to see him as like, oh, no, I couldn't be Elijah. Obviously, I could not be like that. But actually you can, because in reality, look at it. You've got a man who who experiences the power of God in a way that certainly doesn't seem like I ever have, and it seems like he's closer to God, like he has more of God in his life and seeing the power of God. And yet he gets fearful and runs right afterwards, which tells me that he's just like us, mm-hmm. And, we struggle with the sin in our life and we have victories and then we fall and we have besetting sins or whatever, so we struggle in our lives. And actually Elijah was just like us. He was no great, grand Charlton Heston hero. He had flaws and weaknesses. And I think one of his flaws might have been that he was fearful of man. And so I tried to make sense of that in the storyline of Jezebel. And so I do go a little bit into Elijah as well. But I did another thing too. I focused more on Elisha as his student, mm-hmm. Because Elisha, and so I tell some of the story through the eyes of Elisha as he is learning from Elijah in the school of the prophets. Because at that time there was a school that they called the Sons of the Prophets. And so I pictured Elisha as a student. He wasn't a prophet yet. He was just a student. And so he's sort of the protege of Elijah. So you see the comparison of the young guy with the older guy and the mentor relationship going on there as well. So there's a lot of things going on in the story of Jezebel. And I think it's quite satisfying. Some of my fans have been saying that it's one of the best stories yet that I've written. So that's cool.
There's a lot going on here in the spirit realm, but also historically, because as you mentioned, during the reign of Ahab, there were plenty of conflicts with the Aramean kingdom of Damascus, also ruled by worshipers of the storm god Baal Hadad. The name of the king, Ben Hadad, son of the storm god. It was kind of a clue. But yeah, you're right. The interesting conflict here is in how a soldier, Jehu, would deal with this is the internal conflict. Do I serve the king because he's given me an order, or do I do what's right by what God says through the prophets and through Elijah? Kind of a different approach to telling the story. We could go on for hours on this because there's a lot more here that we've not yet even unpacked, but we're almost at 40 minutes into the interview here. What was your overall purpose, your overall goal or hope that people would take away from reading Jezebel, Harlot, Queen of Israel?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I would say that I was really driven by the need to see how very relevant the ancient world still is to today. Now, you and I have different views on eschatology and stuff like that, but the idea of we think these ancient stories are so removed from us, but like I said, if you look back, you see connections with abortion, feminism. You see, sure, it's not the same thing, but I mean, the human nature doesn't change. And so there is much to learn about us from the ancient world, and we see reflections of what's going on now. And I also think that in some ways, I think we've despiritualized things, secularized things, so that even many Christians don't tend to see the supernatural aspect of things. And there really is more supernatural to it than some Christians may want to admit. For instance, it's not just rhetoric to say that abortion is like child sacrifice. I mean, I think it literally is a supernatural. There's a supernatural connection to it. It is a form of child sacrifice to Molech. Just because we don't have the God names in there today doesn't mean it's not still relevant. So there's that element, and there's also just the element of this is another in the storyline of the war of the seed. And I think that's one of the dominant themes in the Bible, where the God protects His line that will ultimately lead to Jesus, and He's protecting the seed line, so to speak, and that element is strongly in there as well. But also, there's another angle, and I think this was the most fascinating to me, and that is, for many years I had, like a typical evangelical Christian, I'd known the Bible stories, and I'd known that Israel had fallen away and they were worshiping, Baal and stuff like that. But my understanding of that was always more like the Israelites are monotheists who have lapses into polytheism. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, they would fall away and they'd worship Baal, but then they'd come back. And my paradigm of thinking of that was sort of like the modern day version of like addictions, right? Oh, like, we may be Christians, but maybe we're an alcoholic, or maybe we've got an addiction, or we fall off the wagon and we get drunk and we're forgiven. We come back, and it's like that's kind of how way I pictured it. But the more I studied the archaeology of the time period and stuff, the more I came to realize that no, it really was more like the Israelites were polytheists who had occasional lapses into monotheism. And so I was like you. I'm fascinated by all these elements of paganism that Israelites incorporated into their worship and their daily lives, not in a way of like, I don't have a syncretistic desire, but more like an information, and then it also ends up glorifying the purity of Yahweh all the more because Yahweh ends up judging that stuff. So, for instance, I show how they worshipped at the high places, in the hills and stuff of Israel. I talk about the Masabah, the standing stones. I talk about the Kedoshim, the holy prostitutes. I talk about the sacred marriage, the cult of the dead, the Marzia feast. These are all elements of things, and the Rephaim. These are all elements of things that Israelites that engaged in pagan worship. And I just found it, I wanted to understand, what would it be like to have Israel that is like worshiping all this, engaged in all this pagan worship, It's just so different from how we would tend to picture them, And so I wanted to capture that reality, but yet in such a way to show that there's a purity of God that despite that, right? And what it did for me was it helped me to see all the more how much the prophets were really, truly the outliers. I mean, they were the voice of God. Yes, they were condemning and judging, but like they were the only voice of purity in that world at that time, and what would that have looked like? So that was like my goal, to try to capture that messy world, and yet to show where is the seed of hope there, the seed of purity in the midst of all that corruption. And it's there, and it's beautiful, and it's bright, and it's Yahweh, and it's and it comes through Yahweh's mouthpiece, Elijah, and the prophets, right? So yeah, those are some of my goals in doing that. And then one of the things that I did was, you know all the stuff I've referred to here, of course, and maybe your audience doesn't. But one of the things I do is I write. You mentioned this earlier, and if you buy the book Jezebel, they're inside the book. You can sign up to get a free copy of a companion book called The Spiritual World of Jezebel and Elijah. And in that book, I lay out all the biblical historical research that the novel is based on. And it's a good 150 pages, so it's like a full book in and of itself. And I guarantee it's fascinating, because I explain all these things that you also have written about, like the cult of the dead and the various deities and what their roles were, and quoting from the original sources and such. And I think a lot of Christians have found it very helpful in appreciating the novels, but they just love it just for the Bible research itself,
No, absolutely. It makes sense out of some of the weird and sometimes disturbing passages in the Old Testament. We confront things like God telling Joshua to completely destroy or devote to destruction all of these communities. What, little kids too? Well, yeah, but God doesn't see them the way we see them, and he sees the spirit realm that we don't see, and what's going on there, which is, we've got to trust that ultimately God is ultimately just and righteous, and we don't know how he sorts things out in the spirit realm. All we know is what he's told us through the prophets, the apostles, and of course through Jesus Christ, which is that there's no way to heaven or to the Father except through him. But what was going on back in the days of Joshua wiping out the Anakim? Okay, we've got to trust that he's got. Otherwise, we wind up where, say, Pete Buttigieg is now saying, well, this stuff is contradictory, so you just got to make up your own mind about what makes sense. Really, everyone does what's right in his own eyes. Read the Old Testament. That didn't work out well for Israel. And it won't work out well for us either. But if we get a better sense of what's going on in the spirit realm, this conflict between these rebellious entities who, like us, were created with free will, things begin to fit together a lot better. And it makes a lot more sense out of this long narrative. And the other thing that's really cool, Brian, and I think you can appreciate this. Well, I know you do, because you've written it into the series. Some of the characters as we've discussed, some our early interviews about Noah Primeval, the scene there with Methuselah and Tubal-Cain, going out, their final scene. That was a stand and cheer in the theater moment, if that ever makes it to the big screen. But but when we begin to see this story in the spirit realm that you're depicting through fiction, that Sharon is depicting through fiction, Mike Heiser in his Facade Chronicles, if he ever gets the third novel written, he's doing the same thing. You begin to realize we're all part of a much bigger narrative. We're all part of a real life Lord of the Rings type quest. Once we begin to see the spirit realm and the activity in the spirit realm that's depicted in the Bible, if we understand the biblical text correctly. So,
absolutely.
Well, appreciate your work and happy to direct people your way. Chronicles of the Watchers is the new series from Brian Godawa, Chronicles of the Nephilim, Chronicles of the Apocalypse. His other series, you'll find all of those at his website, Godawa.com, or you can just follow the links in the show notes at vftb.net or wherever you're accessing this podcast. Brian, enjoy the conversation, enjoy your research, and boy, just we need to do this more often. I keep saying that, and one of these days I'll actually, put it on a calendar with a tickler note or something, say, time to get a hold of Godawa. So thanks for your time again today.
Thanks for having me.
Brian Godawa, his website is Godawa.com. Highly recommend his writing, and we'll keep an eye out for what may develop from the new novel, Jezebel, Harlot Queen of Israel. Fascinating reading. If you enjoy history, if you enjoy a good story, and if you want both of those wrapped up with some solid theology, Yeah, good stuff. Coming up, where we're going to be in 2020. We got a lot of things going on. How you can help us without spending a dime. Yeah, and hopefully we can see one of the two of these places that will be next year outside the country. We'll tell you where and when as A View from the Bunker continues. Straight ahead.
I intend to share undisclosed facts that are stranger and scarier than most people can comprehend, and it is going to shake the public to the bone. And yes, this involves a cover-up of the highest order by national space agencies, including NASA.
The asteroid is 100% certain to strike Earth, according to one space expert who says this is a matter of life and death.
You'd probably have millions of casualties. Is a planet-killing asteroid a possibility? NASA has determined that the threat is real.
And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And many men died of the waters.
Chief technology experts and working scientists agree with me. But what's more concerning is that this was prophesied in the Bible for the end times.
The Wormwood Prophecy by Thomas Horn. Available now as part of a special offer from SkyWatchTV. Call 844-750-4985 or log on to skywatchtvstore.com. Wormwood is here.
Unveiling the ancient realms of demonic kings and Satan's battle plan for Armageddon. Skywatch TV is proud to announce two new special offers. The Veneration Collection with optional Red Wing Saga series. Sold separately, this exclusive offer retails for $90. Yours now for only $35 plus shipping and handling. But wait, now you have the option to upgrade and expand your collection by including all 5 previously released books in the Red Wing Saga. The expanded collection, which includes all 8 books and the Search for the Rephaim DVD documentary, holds a retail value of $190. Yours now for your donation of only $100 plus shipping and handling. So don't delay. Order the Veneration Collection with optional Red Wing Saga series now. Available at SkyWatchTVStore.com or call 1-844-750-4985.
Driving the internet to think. That is our mission, and this is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Join us on social media. Follow us at View from Bunker or at Derek Gilbert. Facebook page, View from the Bunker. Easy enough. You'll also find me online at Derek Gilbert on Twitter. Parlay Savior Connect one way at Derek P. Gilbert. But of course, the easiest way is to download our free mobile app, which is good for Android or iOS devices. You'll find links at the website. Our global hub for the webcast, vftb.net, View from the Bunker. Coming up next Sunday night, we'll talk to Drew Graffia. He is an interesting young fella. He's been a guest on the program here recently, but wanted to talk to him about his new book, which when we first discussed his program, his video program, Radical Christian, was not aware that he was writing a book, but the book is now out. It's available at Amazon.com, all the usual places. The Warrior Priest Mindset, which for Christians, since we're supposed to turn the other cheek, love our enemies, the concept of us men being warrior priests sounds a little counterintuitive based on what we've been taught in church. So Drew Graffia joins us December 15th. Isn't it amazing? We're already halfway through December. December 15th, 2019. And that's the night we will upload it and make it live at vftb.net. Then on December 22nd, just a heads up, we may step on some toes, but I'll try to do it gently. We've not seen as much of this year, or maybe over the last couple of years of talking about this subject. People have realized where I stand on it and have just decided not to go there in their conversations or their interactions on social media with me on this, but we will basically read and discuss a column or an article that I wrote for my website last year at Christmas based on a couple of years worth of research and dealing with this subject. Merry Non-Pagan Christmas. Why you don't have to feel guilty for celebrating Christmas as a Christian. That will be December 22nd, 2019 here at vftb.net. Where we're going to be in 2020. We got a lot coming up, and it's beginning to get a little stressful. And not really in a bad way, but just my personality is such I don't really get productive until I've got deadlines looming, and maybe that's just human nature. You know, you work better when you know you've got the paper due the next day. Well, we've got deadlines for things coming up in 2020, but we've got a lot of travel scheduled, so I've got to get started on writing some things. Because once the travel season starts, writing becomes more difficult when you're moving around a lot. March 6th through 8th of 2020, the first conference of the new year, that's the Remnant Warrior Conference from Hear the Watchman. It's at the Hilton DFW Lakes Conference Center, Grapevine, Texas, very close to the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. We'll be there with L.A. Marzulli, Paul McGuire, Dr. Michael Lake, Coach Dave, Pastor Paul Begley, and more. This will be a little different from the conferences in Dallas in the past. This one's limited to about 300. They're moving the sessions to the theater at the Hilton DFW Lakes Conference Center, which seats 300 very comfortably. But it'll be a little more intimate, better acoustics, and again, the seats more comfortable for long-term sitting throughout the days. So this one, if you want to attend, don't wait. And there are a couple of reasons for doing it. First, you don't want to miss out. But secondly, if you do so before January 1st, you get the early bird discount rate. And if you use promo code Gilbert20, you save another $20. So the normal rate after January 1st will be $129. Right now it's $99, but if you use the promo code Gilbert20, you get another $20 off of that. So you get in for $79. That's $50 off the regular rate if you sign up now. Plus you guarantee that you don't wait and then get squeezed out because there won't be any seats. So take care of that before you get caught up in the holiday rush at hearthewatchmen.com. We'll be going to Scotland in April. And if you're in the UK or anywhere in Europe, because travel, we found, in Europe from country to country, even from Israel to the UK, was a lot less expensive than flying from the United States to the UK or to Israel. So we will be there April 24th through 26th with Pastor Billy Crone, Evangelist Stephen Wright, and Jim Barfield, director of the Copper Scroll Project. This is the Scottish Bible Prophecy Conference in Troon. That's in Ayrshire. It's on the west coast of Scotland, near Glasgow. Again, we'll be speaking over 3 days, April 24th, 25th, and 26th of 2020. Sharon and I will both be speaking. The cost for the 3 days is £54.50 for all 3 days. If you just can attend for 1 day, single-day tickets are £29.50. And this is at Scottish Bible Prophecy Conference.brushfire.com. Scottish Bible Prophecy Conference.brushfire.com. We'll be in San Antonio in June, Branson in July for the True Legends Conference. I'll be speaking at the conference there. The theme of the True Legends Conference in July, the 10th through 12th, Ancient Cataclysms and Coming Catastrophes, Pre-Adam and the Return of the Days of Noah. There's fascinating speakers lined up for this one. L.A. Marzulli, Steve Quayle, Gary Wayne, author of the Genesis 6 Conspiracy, Carl Teichribb, Dr. Michael Lake, Russ Dizdar, and more. And some of the research that Sharon and I are working on will go into the presentation I'm putting together for the True Legends Conference. The Defender Conference from SkyWatchTV in late August. That is sold out. The Glacier Prophecy Summit. We will be talking with Gary Stearman and Bob Ulrich of Prophecy Watchers about that this weekend. In fact, well, early next weekend, Monday. We'll be in Oklahoma City. That is Monday, the 8th, 9th, the 9th. Yeah. And recording some programs for Prophecy Watchers for broadcast, but also talking about the Glacier Prophecy Summit, September 6th through 13th of 2020. It's the first time Sharon and I are doing anything like this, but they were gracious enough to invite us both to speak, along with L.A. Marzulli, Pastor Billy Crone, Dr. Larry Ollison, Jeff Kinley, and we'll be, during the cruise, taking the beautiful, what do they call it, inside route to, along the Alaskan coastline. So early September should be a beautiful time to go, and some natural beauty. And then, of course, some really biblically sound Bible prophecy teaching. Then in October, we're back in Israel. SkyWatch TV's Tour of Israel with Lipkin Tours, lipkintours.com. There will be an optional 4-day extension in Sardinia. Instead of going to Jordan this year, we're going to Sardinia, and that is to see the megalithic sites there. A stone ziggurat that shouldn't be in the Western Mediterranean, but it is, and scholars date it as far back as, 4,000 BC. Very early after the Tower of Babel, perhaps even before the Tower of Babel. In my calendar, actually, this would be not long after the flood. Plus, the tombs of the giants and more. Sardinia is a fascinating and mysterious island and mainly untouched. It's not very touristy, so we hope you can join us for that. It will be a fascinating tour. The Tour of Israel itself, October 12th through 25th. The 4-day extension in Sardinia goes through the 29th. But if you've been to Israel and just want to see Sardinia, we're staying on in Sardinia for another week, October 29th through November 5th. For more information, log on to lipkintours.com. That's Lipkin, L-I-P-K-I-N, lipkintours.com. Please, if you get a spare minute, leave us a review on one of our books at Amazon.com. I mean, if you purchased from SkyWatch TV, we appreciate that. We appreciate your support, but we'd like to get the word outside the choir. So if you've got a copy of our book, and we're not asking for a phony review, honest review, Amazon.com, greatly appreciated and costs you nothing. A View from the Bunker, a production of Gilbert House, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. The opening theme every week, Iron Bacon by Kevin MacLeod. His website, www.incompetech.com. Our announcer, D.C. Good. Next week, we talk about the warrior priest mindset and why that is appropriate for men of God, followers of Jesus Christ. Drew Graffia joins us. That program uploads next Sunday night. That's December 15th of 2019 at vftb.net. Until then, please remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert. Thanks for listening. This is A View from the Bunker.